Gentlemen, how's everybody doing?
Good.
I don't really have anything else. I just wanted to invite Chief Gilbert, just to address the community and the board on what the sheriff's office can do for us if the levy passes, and also if it doesn't. And we can answer any questions.
Okay.
So, without further ado,
Thank you very much. On behalf of Sheriff Dallas Baldwin, it's a pleasure to be here to make ourselves available to the residents that are here in person, as well as to the trustees, the Board of Trustees. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office augments and supports the current Franklin Township Police Department. We want to continue to augment and support the Franklin Township Police Department. We believe it's very valuable for the residents in the community of Franklin Township to have their own police department. We at the Sheriff's Office will always be there to help serve in that capacity to support the Franklin Township Police Department. With that being said, we want to make ourselves available to answer any questions as to how we will continue to do that in the capacity we do now. We are aware of the staffing issues right now within the police department, to the point about 70 shifts have been, there's been about 70 shifts in which there's been no Franklin Township police officer on duty, which means that we have to kind of pick up the slack as it relates to emergency runs, what we call priority 1 and 2 calls within the township, and then we have to properly staff our West Side Zone 3 patrol shifts in accordance with that. Just a few weeks ago, we had a homicide shooting that occurred during a shift in which there was no Franklin Township police officer on duty. One of the things that I want to emphasize is community engagement with law enforcement right now is a critical topic that's being talked about, very positive as well as very negative. One of the things that I want to be very clear on is you want your own township police officers out there on the streets. There's more engagement when it's your own agency and it's your own officers. Not to say that that engagement isn't there as a sheriff's deputy, but the reality is if we're coming in to take care of an emergency, because we also have to be concerned with where we staff our deputies, that deputy could be coming from far off, whether in Jackson Township, Pleasant Township, Prairie Township, even as far as the east side from Hamilton Township with our east side cars. We will come and we will be there for the emergency. However, we're not going to be able to really do much of a follow-up, have good interaction, really have that conversation with the residents, the community members about the ongoing issues that they're seeing in their neighborhoods. Because that deputy is just there quickly for whatever it is, and then he's going back to his other area of responsibilities into another township. So that's where you lose that connectivity to have that engagement with your own officers. So moving forward, we would be available, just like we were many years ago, to augment and to come into the township for priority 1 and 2 calls if there's no Franklin Township police officer on duty, or if the levy fails, and then the township police department would be much reduced in its size with staffing, and that you would see a very tough time because nobody wants to come work for a police department where it's unknown whether or not the funding's going to be there. Recruiting is tough right now. We're actively hiring at the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, and we're having a tough time recruiting where we are financially stable at the Sheriff's Office to have somebody come and work for the next 25 or 30 years. Without the support of the residents in the community to pass the levy and have a police levy, it's going to be tough for Chief Smith to have people want to stay here as well as want to come here to have a career in law enforcement within the township. So it's very vital and important that that funding source is there, so that continued staffing as well as continuously hiring and keeping the police department staffed is important. So with that, I can answer any questions as a Sheriff's Office representative.
And I will open up the floor at this time to anyone who has any questions for Chief Gilbert.
Chief, I would like to just commend you and your officers, and as long as I've worked with you for 9 years, you touched a little bit as in before. I remember 9 years ago, we were in the same situation with, we had a different chief at that particular time. And I know people told me there's no way that you'll get this done, and we were able to get it done, and we were able to protect the residents of Franklin Township. And having you guys help us with the understanding that the residents were doing the best that we can, with what we got. I do commend the sheriff and the resources that they give us to help. We do know that that's only a Band-Aid, as you said. We need the front line being our own people, and then we have you guys as a secondary to come in and follow up different things, as you were mentioning about the homicide and et cetera. So we live in a world nowadays where we've all have never seen it like this before, and law enforcement is so critical for all of our communities, and to be safe and to be there, because if you're not there, who's going to be there? So I thank you.
I appreciate that. And just to clarify, under the statutory requirements for the sheriff, we are mandated to respond to emergencies in the unincorporated and incorporated areas of the county that do not have a police department. So I just want to be clear, we will be there if it's an emergency, but that's a lot different than it being able to do follow-up. That's a lot different than being able to provide a visual deterrent to crime, school zone enforcement, handling parking complaints, the type of concerns that residents have with what they're seeing in their community as it relates to wanting a visual presence of law enforcement. We're just not going to be able to help provide that, and that's why it's crucially important for you guys to have your own police department to be able to do that. So I appreciate your comments on that, and it's been a pleasure to work alongside Chief Smith. The current staff at the Franklin Township Police Department is top-notch, and we want to continue to be that support and augmenting role here within the township. Lieutenant.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a point too, and have you verify it. First off, we work well together as the Franklin Township Police Department in Franklin County, and we have for as long as I've been here for 33 years. With the idea that if the levy was passed, and the payment that they would have for the levy, which would be probably about the same or less than what it would be to contract with the sheriff's department, when they actually vote and get past our levy, they're going to have 12 full-time officers, from what I understand. Some part-time officers also involved, but with the fact that we contract with the sheriff's department, we're also going to get all the resources that the sheriff's department has to offer, along with backup and response immediately with us, which kind of makes it a pretty good deal in my opinion. Is that correct?
Correct. The services that we're able to provide the township now, would continue to provide, would be to investigate serious auto crashes and or deaths involving fatal crashes. The Detective Bureau response, our SWAT unit, our community engagement partners over in support services, another area of the sheriff's office that is able to provide, and you've seen that. You've seen us out on National Night Out, a lot of events like that. So the sheriff's office, obviously, with that partnership comes with a lot of opportunity for us to provide those specialized units that smaller agencies just aren't able to do. So canine response, as well as on-duty SWAT response. That's correct.
And then how much does that cost us?
The contracting?
No, I mean for this extra service for the residents. What's that cost to residents?
In regards to if there is no police department?
No, if we have our police department.
Oh, we provide that as a service of support for the Franklin Township Police Department.
As long as we contract with them for.
I guess the
Yeah.
point that I was
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
point that I was trying to get is, I kind of set you up on that. The point I was trying to get is because it's almost a moot point. Some people think that, well, we've got them, why do we need them? This is above and beyond.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily, if the levy passes, we're gonna pay for that additional service. is
Right,
what
I
I'm
got
getting
you.
to.
So the confusion is when I talk contracts, I talk about Prairie Township and Hamilton Township contract for law enforcement services. What the lieutenant's referring to is the availability to dispatch and be provided dispatching services.
Correct.
And the huge difference there is if something goes out in Franklin Township, like earlier today, we had 4 or 5 cars coming to assist Franklin Township, that we're coming. We're going to be supportive. We work side by side. And like so, we've had Franklin Township officers assist us outside of Franklin Township. So that partnership is very important, and having that dual response, so to speak, is very important and needs to continue.
So one of the biggest things, and the reason I mention that is because there is a myth that why do we need our township police if we have the sheriff doing all of this? And then if we do vote for this levy, are we also gonna pay for the sheriff coming out to do it, or why should we have both?
Right, and again, I wanna say there's a big difference between what our statutory requirements are and what you actually get with
Correct.
contracted services or your own police department.
Correct.
And I'm not gonna slight in any way Pleasant Township, Jackson, Township, or the village of Harrisburg, or the village of Valley View, if they don't have an officer out. The reality is, we're not really mandated to keep cars there and patrol. We have deputies sometimes that will spend a considerable amount of time in Jackson Township, and nobody's patrolling Pleasant Township because of that. So
So-
we have multi areas to cover.
So one of the biggest things, and then I'll be quiet, that I hear is we should just contract. Well, if we can't afford to pay our own police department, how can we afford to privately contract the sheriff's department?
That's correct. Our current contract at Hamilton and Prairie are very similar in what we provide, and it's the same
And
cost.
pay for that, correct?
Correct. It's the same cost, if not more.
If we don't have a levy to pay for it, we can't contract.
That
with
is
you.
correct. And again, I want to advocate very much so and be very clear. We want to augment and support your current police department. So
Correct.
funding for your current police department is very important.
Correct.
Yes.
There is, I will say this, thank you for coming to Gilbert. We work on many things together.
Yes, we have.
You know where I stand, and, everyone, all the gentlemen sitting up here with me is 100% behind getting this levy passed. And see the importance, and now we need to educate. And what
Yes.
we're doing tonight is educating. I'd like to set up maybe a town hall meeting and have you come back
Okay.
and, between now and the levy time.
Absolutely.
And, cause I think there's people out there that don't understand this, like, trustee Flushing was saying, that there's a myth that we just do away with the police department amongst certain residents. We just do away with the police department and the sheriff will take care of it. And that myth needs to be crushed because you guys are already stretched thin. And it's not getting any better for you.
That's correct.
And
And
the temperature of today's, it's not gonna get any.
well, in they are very same and similar conversations we've had with individuals that live in the city of Columbus. Well, can the sheriff come in and do it? We're only going to deploy our resources, and we're only allocated so much resources by our funding through the county commissioners for the areas for which we have primary law enforcement responsibility. So although, yes, my guys can make a traffic stop in the heart of downtown Columbus, I'm not sending resources down there to patrol because it's counterproductive because they have their own police department. And although, yes, those tax dollars are being paid for the sheriff's office, rightfully so here in Franklin Township, yes, we will be there. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of having your own officers for that community engagement and the availability to take care of those quality of life issues. We will not be able to do that until the sheriff and the county commissioners are able to come up with some type of resolution, and or we'd be right back here potentially asking you, all right, you don't have a police department anymore, what funding do you have? And then asking for additional funding, which is not, again, feasible if you don't have your own police department. So it's kind of like a ongoing concern, so.
So
hope-
my last question would be, and I know the answer to this, it's just things that I hear. If we was to try to contract the sheriff's department with the same number of officers that we have, it would be astronomical compared to what our current levy is that correct?
That is very correct, and I will say this, the township, the types of calls to service, I would be willing to bet if you were to actually do some type of survey or audit of the types of runs that are occurring, and I just know this from listening to the radio during the day and from my 29 years of law enforcement experience, they're priority 1 and 2 calls, meaning those are 2 officers that need to be sent on those type of calls for safety reasons. Franklin Township would lead, if not in the top 1 or 2, of where those priority runs throughout the county, independent from Columbus, would be occurring. It'd be here.
So
Not to say it's high crime, but
Right.
we have to take precautions to ensure for the safety of deputies and ensure for the safety of officers, because we're responding to those high priority calls that are requiring at least a 2-officer response. And I gotta think it's anywhere between 60 and maybe 60 to 75 up to 80% of those calls to service are those type of 2-officer calls.
So the type of levy that we currently are having on, and us being able to get 12 officers plus the part-time officers and et cetera, to contract with the sheriff's department, we could expect to pay at least more than double, which we don't have the funding for. So in reality, what a bargain we're getting by having our own police department,
Yes,
with the additional bonus of having a sheriff's department.
correct. That is correct.
And like you stated, two cruiser calls. Those are the calls that we're facing here now, and that's why people are not seeing, the residents are not seeing, they might not make it down your street every day. Cause they have to support one another, or they have, they have a sheriff, deputy supporting them, or vice versa.
Yes.
I think Mr. Blevins back there had a
Yes,
question.
sir.
Mike Blevins. So I sent Chief Smith something this morning that was on Facebook,
Okay.
and you totally laid out something totally different tonight.
Okay.
And I know you have no control over what someone puts on Facebook. But what you said there tonight and said as far as what the sheriff's department could and would do is totally different than what's on Facebook. And so I just
I'm
want
not
to
familiar with that Facebook
I
page.
just, well, the chief has it, and he could show it to you. It's not important that you see it, it didn't have anything to do with it. But I wanna let the board know, the fear mongering doesn't work. You're not gonna scare people into voting for the levy. And so, I don't know if you see these posts or whatever, but I'm told there's a police officer behind it. And so I just would love for you to be able to see it, the chief has it, and you have no control, he's able to do whatever he wants. But when I have my neighbors come over or call and they're shook up because they don't think they're gonna have less police protection after the levy than we have now, which is next to none, then, you're scaring people.
I think, if I'm not correct, that's gonna be kind of reality. If we don't have the funding to pay them, we're gonna have to let someone go,
Yeah,
so.
I'll just say this, the staffing right now, the sheriff, from my understanding of why we've had to work there's been 70 shifts that we've been advised there won't be an officer out.
Sure.
Is because there's a fear of anybody wanting to come potentially be hired because it's unknown. So I know that they're understaffed right now. They're understaffed.
I would, for the people that haven't read what I'm talking about,
I haven't seen
I would
any.
appreciate it if you didn't comment. If, I'm not talking necessarily to you, but, I understand. But if you read it,
Take a look at my glasses here.
Facebook page.
Getting old at 50.
It's the community action page.
That's priority 1 and 2 calls there.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. There's a comment on here related to the sheriff's office that says, no police response by township officers and or the sheriff's office at any time unless there is a reason to believe an immediate threat to life exists or an ongoing life-threatening crime or situation is likely to result in serious physical harm to any person. Let me explain what a priority 1 and 2 call is. A priority 1 call would be a shooting, a stabbing, a rape, an active assault that's occurring, an active shooter situation, a drowning. A priority 2 call would be a domestic violence that's ongoing, a nature unknown where there's a potential person injured or slumped over the wheel of a vehicle. Those are our priority 2s. So in essence, that is a correct statement because we will only respond to priority 1 and 2 calls. So if you called and said, hey, my neighbor's, his kid keeps kicking the ball into my yard and coming over and cussing at me, we're not going to get to that call. It's going to be quite some time before we're able to free a deputy up to potentially come to that type of call. That'll be listed in a priority 3 or 4 call. Let me keep reading here just to make sure there's nothing. Is that addressing the sheriff's office?
if you wanna read it and pick it apart here, that's fine.
I don't think it's picking it apart, Mr. Blevins. I think it's what is accurate and description. I haven't read it, but from what he is saying,
How about the part in there while he's reading where it says we'll have 18 officers and part-time officers? Is that correct or incorrect?
I can't answer that.
Correct, we have 12 and 6.
What does it say in there, Byron?
I mean, if it passes, authorizing staff reduced from 18 to 5. Yeah, we have the potential for 18, we don't have 18 now.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Well, and you also, I asked you the question the other day, what would staffing go to with the
Yeah.
past
Yeah, 12
levy?
and, 12
And
and
you did
6.
not say 18.
Well, 12 and 6. 12 full-time
Okay,
and
but
6
that's
part-time.
saying 18 and 5, correct?
Mr. Blevins, it almost seems like we're splitting hairs. We're
We're
trying to
saying
protect
18
the
to 5.
public, and we're giving accurate information that we can.
Am I allowed to ask him a question without you coming after me?
I'm not coming after you. I am
Okay,
making a statement
I asked him a question and he
sir.
answered it, and I
I-
accepted his answer. I had the floor, sir.
You do, and this is also from the board of trustees. We're having a conversation. As soon as I speak, you can speak back.
I'm done. You're good. I'm good. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Back to the question about a potential town hall or more information.
Yeah.
Yes, I would make myself available for that, and then I would also offer the opportunity for the sheriff to be here. He's at an engagement tonight, another prior engagement, and
He's a
he
busy
sends-
man.
He's busy, and he also sends, obviously his appreciation for the work that Chief Smith and his staff do to help us when we need help as well.
Sheriff Walden and I have had a few conversations, and, yeah, we've had some real hard talks. You're here reassuring those talks tonight that it's a cold, hard reality that none of us wanna face if the levy doesn't pass, and
Yep.
we need to do everything in our power as citizens. I'm a citizen first, I live here, we all live here. And we need to pass that levy, to protect our township, and with their assistance. And we thank you for your time, and,
Thank you.
yeah, I'll get a hold of you. We'll
Okay.
try to figure something out between now and
Thank
then.
You
Thank
know,
you,
one
everybody.
last thing for the
Yes.
sheriff's department, and I know some of my neighbors sitting here. We had a gentleman that was 500 feet from my front door that was shot in a shooting. And,
I'm smiling because I actually saw you on the cruiser video when I
Right.
reviewed it. You're yelling, "There he is! That way! That way! That way!" You get your gun out. I think you were
Right.
yelling, "Get your gun out!" or
But
"Be
this
careful!"
is the
or
amazing part. When I went down to explain to him, I knew that the person that fled from the situation was a driver and a shooter, and the van door is open.
Mhm.
And we knew that he would be firing because he's already shot one person laying there,
Yeah.
and it was over a drug deal. He had to go to the end of the street, and I knew it drops off so you can't see. They turned around, and as I was telling this officer, I said, there he is, he's coming right at you, and this guy's flying, trying to make it midway so he can turn on another street.
Yeah.
That officer, and
That
I
was
told him,
Deputy Crosby.
I said, you better get ready, he's gonna fire on you.
Yeah, it was Deputy
And
Crosby.
he's grabbing his gun, but what did he do? Went head on, I mean, head on into danger, knowing
Yeah.
that this guy just shot this guy laying here.
They tried to park and get out real quick too.
And they were going head to head, and this guy's trying to make it to where he can turn, and then he turned, and then so on happened. But that takes a lot of courage to be in your vehicle and know that that's the shooter coming right at you and taking off. That was, I couldn't believe it.
And I'd like to give you some accolades also. Even you being the chief, I know that you're out on patrols with your men.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Uh,
We'll see what happens between now and going home to Pickering. I enjoy being out with them, so
We've
thank
talked
you.
several times about
Yeah.
that, and, I appreciate that, and we appreciate everything you
Yeah.
do.
Well,
You
thank
guys
you.
run into we hear gunshots as citizens, we run away.
Yeah. That's what
These guys run
towards it. I
towards
don't
fire.
drive
I mean,
to it as they're heading
police,
nose to
police
nose.
officers and firemen, I don't know which one.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Thank
everybody's
you.
time. And I want to thank our community members that are here. It's important for you to be here, and it's too bad more aren't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.